Burkina Faso has shaken the world. A small African nation, often ignored in global headlines, has stood against the most powerful institutions on earth. In one bold move, it forced the world to look and listen. But is this a stand for dignity, or a step into isolation? When the weak confront the mighty, the question is no longer about politics. It becomes about pride, identity, and survival. The world now waits in suspense. Is this the rise of a new voice for Africa, or the beginning of a dangerous silence? The United Nations entered Africa in the name of peace and humanitarian aid. Its blue helmets arrived with promises of safety, stability, and hope. In Burkina Faso, peacekeepers set up missions, reports were written, and speeches were made. But beneath the surface, a different story grew. For many citizens, the UN was not a shield. It was a shadow, seen less as a neutral force and more as the extended arm of Western power. And in that growing perception lay the seeds of defiance, waiting for the moment to break into open challenge. In 2022, the ground shifted. A young soldier, unknown to most of the world, rose to power through a sudden coup. His name, Ibrahim Traoré. From the very start, his message was uncompromising. We will defend our land ourselves. No hesitation, no apology. While others bowed to foreign influence, Traoré faced it head-on. France, the West, the powers that had long dictated Africa's fate. He stood against them with a clarity that electrified his people. It was the beginning of a new chapter, one that promised resistance and confrontation. And then, Traoré did what no one expected. He ordered the United Nations out of Burkina Faso. An official letter, signed and sealed, carried the message. A government announcement confirmed it to the world. What seemed unthinkable was now undeniable fact. The reaction was instant. From New York to Paris, from Washington to Brussels, shock rippled through the corridors of power. A small African nation had just told the world's largest institution to leave. And with that single act, the balance of power began to tremble. The government's stance was clear. The United Nations had failed. Terrorism kept spreading, villages kept burning, lives kept being lost, yet no real action came from those who claimed to protect. For ordinary citizens, the frustration was deeper. The UN writes reports, but on the ground it does nothing, people said. Their trust was gone, replaced by anger and disbelief. And in that anger, Traoré found the justification to act, turning doubt into defiance and defiance into decision. The streets erupted in celebration. Crowds gathered, voices rose, and the sound of chanting rolled through the capital. Flags waved high, not in protest but in triumph. For many, it felt like freedom. Freedom from foreign control, freedom from a power they never chose. The moment carried a sense of rebirth, as if the nation had reclaimed something stolen long ago. And with every cheer, the message grew louder. Burkina Faso was no longer afraid to stand alone. In Washington and Paris, concern quickly turned into alarm. Officials spoke in cautious tones, but the message was clear. Burkina Faso had crossed a dangerous line. Headlines screamed across the Western press. Burkina Faso turning rogue. Analysts warned of instability, of a nation slipping out of the world's control. But beneath the diplomatic language lay a deeper fear, that by pushing out the UN, Traoré was opening the door for Russia and China. A new alignment was forming, and the West knew it could no longer take Africa's loyalty for granted. The United Nations responded with disappointment. Its officials insisted, "We were only here for peace and aid." The words carried a tone of regret, as if the decision were a misunderstanding rather than a rejection. But on the ground, the question refused to fade. Was the UN's presence ever more than symbolic? Reports were written, missions announced, yet the violence continued. To many, the blue helmets became a symbol not of protection, but of absence. And in that gap between words and reality, Burkina Faso's choice began to look less reckless and more inevitable. Mali had already taken its stand. Niger soon followed, and together with Burkina Faso, a new front was forming in West Africa, one that openly defied both the West and the United Nations. Out of this wave, Traoré emerged not just as a leader of his own nation, but as a symbol for the continent itself. Young, unyielding, unapologetic, he became the face of an Africa no longer willing to bow. Young Africa resisting colonial powers. The phrase echoed across the region, turning defiance into identity, and identity into a movement. The world was beginning to see not three separate countries, but the birth of an alliance with one shared voice. But with bold defiance came heavy risks. Would international aid now be cut off? Would the lifelines of food, medicine, and funding suddenly dry up? Sanctions loomed in the background, a weapon the West had used before. Isolation was a real possibility, and with it, the threat of economic collapse. For the people of Burkina Faso, the stakes were not abstract. Every decision touched survival, whether a family could eat, whether a village could endure. The question hung in the air. Could a nation fight for dignity without sacrificing its very lifeblood? As the West pulled back, new partners stepped forward. Russia offered fighters, weapons, and the promise of security through. The Wagner Group and its allies. China extended its hand with investments, infrastructure projects, and the allure of long-term development. Burkina Faso was no longer looking west. The shift was clear, deliberate, and bold, toward Moscow and Beijing, toward a different future. And with every step eastward, the message grew sharper. The old order was fading, and a new balance of power was taking shape on African soil. To the world, it looked like a bold, symbolic move, an act of defiance meant to shake the global order. Traoré had proven his courage, his willingness to stand against giants. But on the ground, the question was far more personal. Would this decision truly change lives? Would it bring safety to the villages, food to the tables, hope to the young? Or was it only a political gesture, a powerful image with little substance behind it? The answer, for now, remained uncertain. And in that uncertainty lay both the promise of transformation and the danger of disappointment. Analysts quickly split into two camps. One side called Traoré a hero, a leader who dared to fight for dignity when others bowed their heads. To them, he was the voice of a continent reclaiming its pride. The other side saw recklessness. They warned that his defiance would drag his people into greater hardship, cutting them off from aid, from allies, from the stability they desperately needed. Hero or hazard, liberator or liability. The debate raged on, but one truth was undeniable. The world could no longer ignore Burkina Faso. A small nation is speaking to the world. We will make our own decisions. Its voice rises beyond the walls of the UN, beyond the borders of Africa. This is not just a message to one institution. It is a declaration to the entire global order. Burkina Faso is saying what countless others have felt but never dared to state openly. Sovereignty is not negotiable. And dignity cannot be outsourced. And in that single defiant cry, the world hears more than politics. It hears a challenge, a reminder that even the smallest nation can force the powerful to listen. Burkina Faso expelled the United Nations. The move stunned the world, sparked celebrations at home, and triggered outrage abroad. Western powers warned of chaos, while Russia and China offered open arms. The risks were clear. Aid could vanish, Sanctions could strike, isolation could follow. Yet for many, the decision carried a deeper meaning, a stand for dignity, a rejection of control, a demand to be heard. Because true power is never in the hands that dictate from above. It lives in the voices that dare to speak without fear. And today, the voice of Burkina Faso echoes far beyond its borders, resonating across Africa and into the conscience of the world.